Today, Sally Yates and James Clapper were testifying about their favorite conspiracy theory, the idea that the Russians hacked our election. We'll talk more about that and revelations of actually political surveillance that exceeds anything that we have seen or have seen exposed publicly is beginning to come to light. But first, we see that Obama warned President Trump against hiring General Flynn as National Security Advisor. I can imagine he did. As they point out here, and this is the words of Sean Spicer, he said, "It's true that President Obama made it known that he wasn't exactly a fan of General Flynn's, which frankly shouldn't come as a surprise, given that General Flynn worked for President Obama as an outspoken critic." Well, what did he say as an outspoken critic? What got him fired from the Obama administration? Well, he pointed out that ISIS was being armed by the U.S. government, not by accident or circumstance, but as deliberate policy. And, he also used that phrase that they don't like to hear, Islamic terror. And it's almost like I can imagine that Obama called up Trump and said, there's certain words in his vocabulary that we don't want to hear, words like swell and soldier old man. And of course, he used that dreaded term Islamic terror, which McMaster, as soon as he became National Security Advisor, said, we're not going to use that phrase, the phrase that Obama could never use. So, yeah, there was a lot of reasons why he didn't want to see Flynn in there. A lot of reasons why the deep state did not want to see him there. But today we had Sally Yates and James Clapper. If you look at this picture, there the two of them stand with their hands raised, taking an oath to tell the truth. Seriously? This is James Clapper, the guy that we've all seen over and over again. The clip where Ron Wyden asked him if there was any surveillance of American citizens going on, and he no, sir. The world's worst poker player and the world's most obvious liar is James Clapper. And yet the mainstream media is hanging on every word that is coming out of them on this testimony. As UPI is pointing out, Flynn's discussions with Russian Ambassador Sergei Kislyak last year is what's on the table here. And if that is what they're talking about with the election being hacked, maybe somebody should point out to them those phone conversations, those particular ones, happened post-election. They say these were the efforts by a foreign adversary to interfere with and undermine our democratic process, said Yates at the hearing. Well, again, it was post-election. And we saw that Lindsey Graham said, would you tell me if you have any evidence of this? And she said, my answer to that question would require me to reveal classified information. So she can't predict any evidence here nearly a year after they've been investigating this, quote unquote. No evidence, simply allegations and innuendo. That's what we're seeing with the Democrats' favorite conspiracy theory. She said, I would like to make it clear that just because I can't answer it, you should not draw from that assumption that means that the answer is yes. There we go. So she says, just because I can't say that I have evidence or don't have any evidence, you shouldn't draw a conclusion from that there was evidence of collusion. Do you understand that? So they're still going to imply that there was collusion, even though she's kind of pouring water on that idea. But if we look at the headline from ABC News, they say that this is nothing at all political from Sally Yates. This was simply her effort to make sure that the vice president knew that Flynn's information was false, even though she won't tell us what that information was or any evidence that he was colluding with the Russians after the election. And we look at James Clapper and what he's having to say. He says Russia is now emboldened to interfere in elections in the U.S. and around the world. He said Russia's meddling in last year's U.S. presidential election amounted to a high water mark in its decades-long effort to interfere in political contests. See, this is their narrative. They don't offer any proof. As a matter of fact, they've been busted by Vault 7. Vault 7 exposed their so-called proof that this was something that was done by the Russians. They said, we saw that it was done on a Cyrillic keyboard. We saw that this came from Russia and so forth. We know they can route things anywhere they want. And based on the documents we saw from Vault 7, we saw they had tools to not only hack into our private lives, but tools to make it look like these documents came from any of their usual suspects, whether it was Iran or Russia or North Korea, you name it. Okay, they're going to make it look like it came from somebody else. We have a situation here where James Clapper, who has absolutely no credibility, is the one that is being talked about by the mainstream media, and they're ignoring everything that WikiLeaks told us about what was going on with this. They start with the assumption that this was the Russians doing this, and this is the assumption. If you listen to Yates and you listen to Clapper, everything there is based on the assumption that the Russians did it, that they are unbiased, people who are standing in the gap to tell us the truth. And yet if we go back and we look at an article going back to February 15th, I think Robert Barnes at Law News made some very interesting points about Sally Yates at that point in time. He said Sally Yates should be investigated for her possible role in Watergate-style surveillance. He says, as an attorney with prior professional experience dealing with Sally Yates, I can imagine no one better who needs to be put under investigation than herself. Sally Yates knew about surveillance being conducted against potential members of the Trump administration and disclosed that information to others. Even Richard Nixon didn't use government agencies themselves to do his black bag surveillance operations. According to published reports, someone was eavesdropping and recording the conversations of Michael Flynn while Sally Yates was at the Department of Justice. She knew about this eavesdropping. She listened in herself, Pelicano style, reported what she heard to others. And that's precisely what Donald Trump was saying today. He says, if you're going to have hearings and you're going to have Sally Yates testify, he tweeted out this morning, ask Sally Yates under oath if she knows how classified information got into newspapers soon after she explained it to the White House counsel. That is the question that needs to be asked. And going back to February, the questions that were being asked by Barnes said, did she obtain a warrant for this activity? Did she disclose to the White House that she was working as a temporary holdover, that she was using her office to intercept calls whenever she could? Did she leak the intercepted calls to the press, as apparently she is leaking them now? So that's the question. She's promoting herself as being someone who is standing in the gap, and yet they continue to push this conspiracy theory. Meanwhile, we see that Rand Paul had asked a month ago that President Trump would look into the fact that he was being surveilled upon. Where I had Donald Trump saying, they were spying on us, they were spying on the White House, they're spying on my people. And remember, he was eviscerated in the press. And yet, Rand Paul, going back to April the 10th, wrote a letter to President Trump. And he said that he had received allegations that the Obama administration had sought intercepted intelligence from the NSA on him and on other members of Congress. And he asked President Trump at the time to conduct a formal investigation. This is according to Circa. They quietly asked for the probe nearly a month ago. See, we just got this information last week, but the letter dates back to April the 10th. So we have President Trump, who knows that this is going on. He knows that they've been spied on by the Obama administration, using the surveillance state. Using the surveillance state is now turned into political surveillance. And in this letter, Rand Paul said, an anonymous source recently alleged to me that my name, as well as the names of other members of Congress, were unmasked, queried, or both in intelligence reports of intercepts during the prior administration. He said, I ask your administration to promptly investigate whether my name or the names of other members of Congress or individuals of our staffs or our campaigns were included in queries or searches of databases of the intelligence community, or if their identities were unmasked. If they were unmasked, because this is nothing other than using the massive surveillance state as a tool of political intrigue. This is far beyond anything that was ever done in Watergate. Meanwhile, we have FBI Director Comey debunking the idea that Huma Abedin's excuse for the Clinton emails appearing on Anthony Weiner's laptop. Remember back in November, she said she was absolutely surprised. This is what Huma Abedin's lawyer said. She said she only learned the first time on Friday from press reports of the possibility that a laptop belonging to Mr. Weiner could contain emails of hers. Actually, they weren't emails of hers. They were above top secret emails. Politico further quoted a source familiar with her account saying Abedin told colleagues she was taken aback when she learned that emails had been found on her husband's laptop. And now we learn that Comey is saying, well, she did it so she could print them out. I guess she didn't know she was doing that at the time. Don't worry. He won't charge you. He'll give you a pass. I know you didn't mean to do anything bad. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
The reason InfoWars Life has 5-star ratings on major third-party sites is because I want products I'm going to use for my family. I take this, my family takes this, and then it funds the operation with the most hardcore, truthful information you're going to find anywhere. So what you find in our news is the same thing you find in our products at InfoWarsLife.com.
If I ever forget to take them, like I have a noticeable difference. I don't feel good. The nascent iodine is one of the ones that was life-changing for me.
Yeah, I actually have just run out of my Super Female. I had a few bottles at my house, and I've been taking it again, hitting the gym once again. Very exciting, feeling great, looking good. So, and I know my hair is luxurious once again. So obviously the Super Female is amazing. I love it.
Nascent iodine is essential. Survival Shield X2. If there's one product that I would say is life-changing that I would suggest, it's Nascent iodine Survival Shield X2. It's got a 5-star rating.
It's a win-win. InfoWarsLife.com.